Hey, what's up, guys? This is Taya La Güera Loca, and you are watching Wrestling with Regret.
Monday Night Raw. For nearly 3 decades, it's been the flagship show of WWE. Though it isn't quite the longest running episodic yada yada in history, through good times and bad, through US Opens and dog shows, Raw's been there for us and is a television institution. Any endeavor that lasts as long as Raw has is bound to have its ups and downs. Critical darlings one year, vilified the next. And there have been plenty of years where Raw has experienced the latter of the two. And this week, I'm gonna rank them, the top 8 worst years of Monday Night Raw. Hang on, let me do it again. Monday Night Raw! For the purpose of this countdown, we ranked these years mostly based on who was in the main event picture, what were some of the biggest storylines going on at the time, that sort of thing. Ratings might be taken into account in some cases, but for the most part, it's pretty much a look at the overall creative picture. Let's begin. Number 8, 2004. As we entered 2004, Evolution was reigning supreme on Raw. The faction closed out the previous year by claiming all 3 of the brand's titles at Armageddon. But by WrestleMania, it'd be Chris Benoit on top, toppling Triple H and Shawn Michaels in the main event to win the world title. After 2 years of the H-Man dominating Raw, it appeared as though a sea change was coming. Well, think again. Firstly, the bulk of the Red Show's booking throughout 04 revolved around the plucky Eugene Dinsmore, GM Eric Bischoff's special kayfabe nephew. There were some good moments here and there, but aside from the tightrope this company was walking with the character every week, they also did what they sometimes do with entertaining mid-card acts, by making him the focus of the show and causing the fans to burn out on him. I've already done a full-length video about young Master Eugene a couple of years back, so you can learn about the character in more detail there if you'd like. Between Eugene's rise to prominence and the ongoing, never-ending feud between Triple H and Shawn Michaels, that left our humble little world champion Benoit sitting at second billing on the cards at best. SummerSlam brought some promise to Raw's main event picture when 24-year-old Randy Orton knocked Benoit off his perch to become world champ. The fans cheered for Orton's victory, which WWE apparently misread as a demand for Randy to turn babyface, and whoa, were they off base there? Triple H and Evolution turned on Orton on the Raw after SummerSlam, completely hot-shotting and ruining what could have been a money-making angle had they taken literally any time to build toward it. Orton's face turn was doomed from the start, as fans had no reason to consistently cheer for him other than the fact that he didn't like Triple H. But that didn't matter because the King of Kings and Lord of Lords regained the big gold belt 1 month later, ending 2004 as we began, with the game on top because nothing less would suffice. Number 7, 1996. The mid-1990s were a tough time for the WWF. Their new generation rebranding failed to bring in ratings, and WCW was consistently beating them with a lot of the stars they themselves helped create. So what do you do when you're getting the pants beat off you with a lot of your former talents? Try making cheap imitations of said talent. I mean, literal cheap imitations. One of the Federation's all-time creative failures has to be when Jim Ross turned heel and claimed to have brought Diesel and Razor Ramon back to the company, only for it to be a swerve. The returns, that is, not the heel turn. We wish he took that back right away. An audible pop turned to an immediate sigh of discontent when Rick Bogner, who was definitely not Scott Hall, came through the curtain as the fake Razor Ramon, followed by Glenn Jacobs, the former Isaac Yankem, as the fake Diesel. If you ever wondered why the dude never seemed to balk at some of the material he later worked with as the Big Red Machine, well, here's your answer. No matter how valid the WWF's claims of trademark infringement by WCW were, and no matter how certain they were they could just recast a beloved character that nobody would notice, this is just a bad move. What made it even worse was the Federation risked their entire credibility with a fan base that was increasingly checking out the other guy, meaning it did the exact opposite of what it was meant to do. Besides that whole thing, Raw 96 suffered mostly due to a lack of direction in the main event. With Diesel, Razor, and Bret Hart either gone or on hiatus, that left Shawn Michaels alone to fight the British Bulldog over and over again to the same results. The one top heel with some promise, Vader, had his title program cut short once Shawn decided he didn't want to work with him anymore. HBK's failure to turn the company around after finally being granted the keys to the kingdom spun Michaels into a personal whirlwind that he couldn't recover from for several years, and had the company realizing by year's end it was time to go back to the drawing board. Thankfully, as they say, business was fixing to pick up the following year. Number 6, 2015. The last few years of programming have led to more fans tuning out than ever before, as Raw's creative direction transformed what was once the most important weekly show to follow to a debatable number 3. And in my opinion, this whole trend began during the year of the big dog. 2015 was the first year they really tried with Roman Reigns. Pushing him to the moon despite the obvious scorn from the crowd, Raw gave us lots of ample opportunities to cringe during the build to WrestleMania 31. Perhaps no more so than this lame-ass tug-of-war between he and Brock Lesnar in the final moments of the go-home show. An image that will live forever in infamy for Reigns, well, one of many, sadly. Then came Mania itself. What was supposed to be Roman's big moment turned into one for one of his other Shield partners, as Seth Rollins famously cashed in his Money in the Bank and won the WWE title. The jubilation felt over Rollins' victory soon gave way to the cold, harsh reality that was the Seth Rollins WWE title reign. Every week he was booked as a sniveling, cowardly lackey to Triple H and the Authority, despite being the supposed best wrestler in the company. Oh sure, he'd squeak out victories when it mattered on pay-per-view, but even 2006 Rey Mysterio had to feel bad over how Seth was being treated as the champion. What could have been something great for the future of the company ended up failing to deliver before it could even reach a natural conclusion. Now stop me if you heard this one before, okay? So, Lana and Rusev break up, then Lana falls in love with another guy, and then another blonde woman's involved. No, it's not the present day, it's 5 years ago. For reasons that were never fully fleshed out, Rusev and Lana split in the aftermath of his US title loss at WrestleMania. It was a multi-month slog that saw Dolph Ziggler as Lana's knight in shining armor, and Summer Rae being groomed by Rusev to look just like the ravishing Russian. It ended abruptly when Lana posted a picture of her real-life engagement to Rusev on social media, completely destroying any remaining element of kayfabe in the angle. They suffered politically for it, but their noble sacrifice saved some of our sanity. Until last year, of course. A quick honorable mention for the year has to go to a singular moment between Paige and Charlotte in the feud over the Divas Championship, when Paige brought up the late Reed Flair in a promo in an effort to get heat. Though taking a shot at a man who died tragically young from a heroin overdose just 2 years prior hurt the company's rep a lot more than it built interest in their pay-per-view match. Number 5. 2011. 2011 began with The Miz on top as WWE Champion, and though many fans didn't care for that, there was one thing about Monday Night Raw they'd probably agree was worse: his number one fan calling the action.
You have no idea what you're talking about, Law. You have absolutely no idea what you're talking about.
The rest of creative aside, if nothing else, Raw in 2011 was abominable for one main reason: heel Michael frickin' Cole on commentary. Though the gimmick was technically born in the summer of 2010, during the first season of the original NXT, it really came into its own the following year. Heel color commentators are one thing, but when the main voice of your show is obnoxious to everyone, that's just going too far. To put it bluntly, heel Cole was insufferable. Because of his place on the card, he was also unavoidable. An endless feud with Jerry Lawler that didn't even get a proper blow-off at WrestleMania, a rap battle with JR, not one but 2 dance contests, just the absolute worst. Fans finally had something to cheer about at Money in the Bank when CM Punk beat John Cena for the championship in front of a raucous Chicago crowd, seemingly on the day his contract with the company expired. The potential of Punk holding the title hostage and leaving the company in limbo for weeks, even months, got a lot of fans excited about what kind of story they'd get to see. Instead, he came back to Raw 2 weeks later, beat Cena in a rematch at SummerSlam, then lost the belt to Alberto Del Rio after he got beaten down by Kevin Nash. After a long and winding road of bullcrap that was supposed to explain how and why Nash attacked Punk, we didn't even get a proper match between them because Kevin Nash pulled a Kevin Nash. What we got instead was Punk losing to Triple H, and that was pretty much it. Though Punk would regain the title later in the year, WWE's handling of his previous reign not only exposed major flaws in creative, but also planted the seeds that led to Punk's ultimate departure from the company. Number 4. 1995. This was a year things went from bad to worse in the World Wrestling Federation, but honestly, when you kick off the year with William Shatner on Raw, you can't do much else but look up. At this time, the Federation was running on diesel power, but instead of guiding the company back to the promised land as a long-term champion, Big Daddy Cool became the lowest drawing WWF champion in history at the time, bringing in record low TV ratings. They say a great hero is only as good as his villain, which he was sadly lacking in '95, as his 2 best options, Shawn Michaels and Bam Bam Bigelow, both turned face shortly after WrestleMania. Enter King Friggin' Mabel. The man on a mission beat Savio Vega in the finals of that year's King of the Ring, a cursed sentence if ever there was one. The biggest push of Nelson Frazier's career peaked with a title match against Diesel at SummerSlam, then the company transferred all his heat to a newly turned British Bulldog, and we all tried to forget that King Mabel was a thing. Now with a main event scene like that, it's hard to imagine things could be any worse for Raw in '95. Well, open wide! This year also saw the debut of Isaac Yankem, Jerry Lawler's personal dentist, who also happened to wrestle in his spare time. He started off strong with a feud with Bret Hart, but the goofy gimmick was doomed from the beginning. And of course, that can be said for a lot of other characters you saw each week on TV. After all, this was the era of the Moonlighters: the dentist, the garbage man, the magician, the teacher, the hockey player, and so on. Despite having so many tools for future success at their disposal, 1995 was one of the worst years from a creative standpoint in Federation history, and those woes were on full display every Monday night. Then again, WCW did have the Dungeon of Doom, so maybe it all evens out. Number 3, 2019. Oh my god, seriously? I have to recap that year again? We were just there! Okay, let's get the good out of the way first. Bray Wyatt came back with the Firefly Funhouse, which led to the debut of The Fiend, which was pretty badass. Becky Lynch got the main event push that a lot of people wanted. Samoa Joe was pretty good on commentary for a few weeks. Besides that, I have nothing. As I've mentioned in one of my most recent countdowns, Raw was plagued with continuity issues and a constantly rotating roster due to the NXT call-ups at the start of the year that went nowhere, the Superstar shakeup, the wild card rule, and finally the October draft. Every week was just a carousel of talent coming and going with no real angles to speak of, making it hard for fans to care about anyone. Oh, except for Shane McMahon, of course. And more often than not, when WWE tried making us care about certain individuals, fans weren't having it. Case in point, Baron Corbin and Lacey Evans, who were both pushed to the moon in the spring of that year, gobbling up tons of airtime alongside Rollins and Lynch. Sure, they were the heels and we weren't supposed to like them, but they shouldn't be boring as well. When it was announced that Paul Heyman was named the executive producer of Raw, there was a sense of optimism in the fan base, even if nobody really knew what this new position truly meant. Well, since he's taken the mantle, we definitely have seen his influence in the form of not one, but 2 storylines involving dysfunctional relationships. There was the Maria and Mike Kanellis debacle, which never got a definitive end, and of course the nonsense between Rusev, Lana, and Bobby Lashley, which is still happening as we speak. 2019 ended with the wedding of Lana and Lashley, a so bad it's good segment that saw Liv Morgan enter the fray, which has just been great. Now can we please stop talking about this dumpster fire every year? Number 2, 2003. In all the terrible and Triple H-iest years of Monday Night Raw, there are none more terribly Triple H than 2003, as this cocky heel champion demolished credible opponent after credible opponent, giving Raw fans little reason to cheer. And look, I know I've taken a lot of shots at Triple H so far in this countdown. I don't mean for this to be a hit piece, but let's be honest, this year just sucked. I mean, this is peak Triple H for all the wrong reasons. The stranglehold in the world title, the 20-minute promos, the cheap victories, the complete lack of comeuppance. It was just brutal. First in his long line of victims came Scott Steiner, a once promising free agent who ended up working hurt and wrestling in some of the worst title matches in history. These came after weeks of such riveting television as bench pressing, arm wrestling, and posing. I can't imagine how this is being outperformed by SmackDown every week. And speaking of archaic booking techniques, let's not forget the controversy surrounding Hunter's WrestleMania feud with Booker T. I understand there's a section of fans who will insist the storyline wasn't about race, but in those first few weeks of build, the lines about nappy hair, people like you, get me a towel, sure felt like it was to me. At Mania itself, one laughably deadly pedigree was all it took for Booker's championship hopes to go up in smoke for another 2 years. Then came the biggest specter of WCW's past that year, Goldberg. In his 1 year with the company, WWE seemingly made it their goal to undermine everything that made him a star at his last job through his booking and backstage skits on Raw. But the final dagger came in his feud with Triple H. Though he did get punked out by the game at SummerSlam, Goldberg would finally beat him for the gold 1 month later, only to give it back to Trips at the end of the year. Like I said, it was hard to root for the good guy in 2003 when the good guy got crushed every single week of the year. If you want to see a major point in history where more and more fans galvanized around startups like Ring of Honor and TNA solely out of their hatred for the big bad WWE, this sustained run for Triple H was it. You have the Reign of Terror to thank for that movement. And my pick for the worst year for Monday Night Raw is 2009. Why is it the worst? I got 2 words for ya. Guest hosts. Like I alluded to when I was talking about 2011, every year's worth of Raw has good and bad things about it, but every once in a while there's one really bad thing to outweigh them all. And in 2009, it was all about the guest hosts. The whole thing was born from a poorly received publicity stunt between WWE and Donald Trump. You see, according to kayfabe, the Donald had purchased Monday Night Raw from a desperate Vince McMahon. Yes, the Monday Night Show, not just the entire company itself, don't ask questions. When the real world saw the news that a man who had bankrupted several casinos in the past had just bought not WWE, the company's stock went into a free fall, which, in fairness, doesn't say much for the intelligence of the real world. Anyway, the company got cold feet and Mr. McMahon bought the Raw brand back from Trump for double the price a week or two later. Now, the reason I bring all this up is because this was the kayfabe genesis for the entire guest host concept. See, Trump promised lots of big league changes to Raw, including having celebrity guests, because that's what fans want to see, right? After buying back Raw, Vince publicly announced he would steal Trump's celebrity idea, thus giving us the guest general manager. And yes, while there were some diamonds in the rough, Bob Barker and Jesse Ventura spring to mind, most other weeks he had poor showings from stars like Jeremy Piven, Kathy Lee Gifford and Hoda Kotb, the Reverend Al Sharpton, men and women who visibly couldn't care less to be there or couldn't be bothered to do a little bit of research beforehand.
We will ban you from the Summerfest.
He'll be banned from SummerSlam is what you're saying.
SummerSlam.
SummerSlammed out!
More often than not, the revolving door of guest hosts gave the show an overall lack of continuity and an overkill of silly moments, but at least it proved the authority figure in wrestling isn't something that just anyone can do. As for what else happened during the year, if we're going to look at specifics, the build to the Randy Orton-Triple H match at WrestleMania 25 had its share of special moments. Who can forget when Trips broke into Randy's fake house while his fake wife let out a fake scream? And speaking of Triple H, discussing the worst of Raw in 09 wouldn't be complete without the reunion of D-Generation X that September. The 06 go-around might have been a bit campy at times, but at least it felt somewhat grounded in reality and was tied into an existing feud. By contrast, this was DX at their most PG-level brand of silly, all at the expense of the men they were feuding with. While Cody Rhodes and Ted DiBiase tried to gain legitimacy in their young careers, the powers that be decided that Triple H and Shawn Michaels were better served trying to sell glow sticks and other merch while adding Hornswoggle as their mascot. And how can we forget the abysmal Little People's Court?
He's gonna have to climb mountains. He's gonna have to climb a beanstalk, okay?
Yeah. What was I talking about again? I can't remember.
In terms of the overall product, Raw in 2009 was a damned wasteland. While SmackDown saw guys like Edge, Jeff Hardy, CM Punk, and John Cena going at it for the title, Raw was just a somewhat less interesting version of the Triple H show, only now with celebrity guests who were way out of their depth. An uncompelling product, a stagnant main event scene, and some jaw-droppingly insulting attempts at humor. That's why I say 2009 was the worst year in Monday Night Raw's history. What bad years spring to mind for you? Let me know in the comment section below. And don't worry, I'll tackle the best years of Raw someday. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.